John Morris, Chief Operating Officer, there you go. Me trying to make it even better, and there you have it, of Waste Management. WM is what it's called now for all you old folks who still try and call it Waste Management. Huge day for WM today. John Morris, you had Investor Day. Well received, well attended?
Both, thankfully. It's the first time we've done it since 2019, so it's been a little while. But we had a full house today, and from everything we gathered from all the participants, it seemed like the story landed really well. And we got the message out.
I saw analysts turning bullish. I saw a lot of calls of buys and higher price targets and overweight ratings. What do you think they like about the company these days?
Well, I think, Nicole, there's plenty to like about us. If you look back over since the last time we had Investor Day, I think first and foremost, we've delivered on our commitments to our shareholders since then. I think also we've broadened our growth trajectory from the core business through some sustainability investments that are really starting to pay off. And then lastly, we made a significant investment in the healthcare business here back about 7.5 months ago. And we told a great story on how that business is progressing as well and how that's all integrating onto our long-term growth platform.
When you think about the growth strategy up to now, have you had to, reinvent or sort of, as you talked about the healthcare,
Sure.
part of it, do you have to reinvent this kind of company, or does it work year after year?
Well, I would tell you it's a recession-resistant company by the nature of what we do. But to your point, there's been some challenges out there. One of the things we've been really battling, but successfully, is just the labor challenge with a lot of these trade jobs. And one of the ways we've been doing that, other than trying to be a great place to work, we talk about being a people-first organization, is really enabling our operations with technology. And part of that enabling is obviously making us more attractive as an employer. It's helping with our retention rates. And a lot of the roles of yesterday were a lot more physically demanding than they are today, and we're able to use a lot of these technology advancements to make these jobs a little less physically demanding.
When we talk about the revenue, you target up to $29.25 billion revenue for 2027. What will be some of the points to get there, some of the catalysts? How do you get there?
Sure. I mean, there's always been steady and strong growth in the core business. Secondly, I mentioned our sustainability investments over the last handful of years. Mm-hmm. We've committed $3 billion to growing the sustainability platform, and that's really starting to pay off very well. And then lastly, I mentioned the healthcare service business that we acquired back in the fall for a little over $7 billion. So there's a few of the high points of sort of what the growth portfolio is going to be driven by.
And then when we talk about Stericycle, tell me a little bit about that. That was a natural hedge for the company. That's when you were talking about earlier, right? I mean, where does that fit in?
So we had not been really in a meaningful way in the healthcare waste business, if you will, and Stericycle was the market leader. And we've honestly looked at the company for over 10 years.
Oh.
And years ago, it probably would have been more of the bet the company for us. But now was really just the right timing for us to go and acquire an exceptional set of assets, a wonderful team of talented people. And a lot of the business, the core business we operate is really around logistics. And if you think about the healthcare waste business, there's a lot of similarities. So we feel like there's some natural synergies in what we've done traditionally as a solid waste company now incorporating the healthcare waste business.
I mean, of course, as you noted, definitely recession-proof. And you have this moat and this big footprint, right? I mean, when you think about, there's no question whether or not WM is huge. And, is there still more room to grow? Is there still more? I mean, you did very smart to try and expand into the healthcare business and do their waste management, right? Sure. Is there more coming?
Well, I still think we have room to run in the traditional business. I mean, M&A has been part of the fabric of how we built the company. We've been a public company over 50 years. And we're still doing traditional, what we call tuck-in acquisitions, and we've got a robust pipeline there, not to mention, like I said, what we've done with healthcare, which I think is, from a growth perspective, fairly unfairly, the population's getting older, and we see that there's some secular advantages to being in the healthcare business over the next handful of decades.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's actually a great point. When you talk about labor and needing people in specific trade, what is the immigration story for a company like yours? I mean, we obviously know a lot of folks are coming over. Now a lot of folks may be sent out. How does that affect a company like yours?
So I would tell you what we've really been focused on, and this is really a post-pandemic issue as much as anything. We saw turnover rates after the pandemic really kind of escalate higher than they've traditionally been. And what we really focused on is we talk about being people first and being a great place to work. And we've been able to really improve our retention rates and reduce our defection rates with a lot of those trade jobs down to the lowest level in company history. And that's across the whole portfolio of employees.
So you're not lacking the workers that you need. Because people are not around or not sent out, or you don't have as many people.
Well,
I don't know. Are you noticing any changes in 2025?
I would say post-pandemic was probably the peak in terms of these trade jobs.
Right.
It is certainly, the labor market certainly loosened up in a lot of those roles. But again, what we've been focused on is being an employer of choice. In a lot of cases, we're recreating some of these traditional trade jobs to be benefited by the enablement of technology and, like I said, make these jobs less physically demanding.
Right. I mean, what a well-oiled machine WM must really be. You've been with the company for decades, I think 3 decades or so. You correct me, you'll tell me. But, it's a well-oiled machine. At the same time, we're facing inflation and far off of where it was. I mean, let's be clear. But tariffs, are any of these things going to affect you, whether it's for parts or, costs that may be inflated for you?
When you think about the tariffs, there's other companies that are much more exposed internationally, so we don't share the same exposure as they do. We do see a little bit of pressure from a supply chain perspective, but I would tell you, relative to most of the folks you probably talk to, it's really not as severe for us. And frankly, we've demonstrated, and we continue to demonstrate, the ability really to drive a bigger and wider spread between our cost of inflation and what we're getting on the revenue line. And I think that's why you see the margin improvement in particular over the last handful of years.
You do own all those trucks, right?
Excuse me?
How many trucks, right? All those trucks are under your umbrella, right? How many trucks do you guys have?
So we own a lot of them, but to put in perspective now with the healthcare service business, we put about 18,000 vehicles on the road every day in the U.S. and Canada.
How many employees do you have?
We have over 62,000 associates as part of the WM family now.
And how do you sort of squash the competition as you have for so long?
Well, I don't know if it's about squashing the competition.
Well, I don't mean it in a mean way, but you're getting it right and you're expanding and you have a growth pattern.
Agreed. I think, first of all, we're an operating company, so operational execution for us is obviously key. Being an employer of choice, especially with some of the trade jobs we've had and some of the pressure, I would tell you I think we benefit more than others because we have been a desired place to be, and you see it in our retention rates. I do think that's a place where we have an advantage over a lot of the competition.
Yeah. Well, John Morris, I hope you come back and speak with me again sometime soon. I'd love any updates, especially on any acquisitions or this growth trajectory. I mean, you have a nice revenue print that you've put in place for 2027. That's your goal, so we'll have some updates there. And congratulations to you and your team for Investor Day. And also an incredible run for a stock that when many of the stocks have been down, I mean, we have to note that this stock hit $242 recently, 52-week high, and is up just this year alone, up 16% in 2025. Another clear winner. Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. John Morris, COO and President at WM on Investor Day here at the New York Stock Exchange.